Well, coming up on today's show, we've got 3 quick news stories and then your excellent answers, as always, to this week's question of the week. Well, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. Happy Sunday. It's the 11th of November and it's Martyn Lee here, and I've been through every EV story that I could find today that I thought you'd want to know about on your weekend. Got a few more that I'll roll over until tomorrow's show, because today it's really all about your comments on question of the week. This is your day of the week on the show. Thank you, though, as always, to myev.com. Great website, great resource, great marketplace they've built for buying and selling used EVs. Myev.com is totally free, and you can check it out right now if you're in the USA. A quick little public service announcement from my friend Lisa on Twitter. Hi, Martyn. We listen every evening, because she's down under, you see. And a quick mention, she says, on your next podcast for the Ozzie mob, the EV EXPO. Was Saturday in Brisbane. Please say hello to everybody who went along, and if you're involved in organising or attending EV Expo, well, I hope you had fun, and let me know what it was like. If you've got any pictures, any updates, you can send me. I always love to hear from you, and we can talk about that on tomorrow's show. The email address is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Well, if you get track mode as well for your Tesla Model 3, your Model 3 Performance, I would love to hear from you too, either on email or the YouTube comments. If you've had it enabled and you want to let everyone who listens to this podcast know your thoughts, again, drop me a note. I'll pass it on. We'll start with the news. Tens of thousands of plug-in hybrids brought here in the UK with very generous government grants are actually burning as much fuel as combustion engine cars. Data compiled for the BBC suggests that the plug-in hybrids in corporate fleets have been averaging 40 miles to the gallon. They should be doing 130, according to BBC Today. Also reported and picked up by the major newspapers and websites in the UK. Many drivers may still have their charging cables wrapped up in the plastic and sitting in the boot or their garage, the Miles consultancy said. Subsidies for new plug-in hybrids have recently been scrapped, but after 7 years of incentives. The plug-in grant was introduced back in 2011, gifting buyers £4,500 off new cars. The incentive helped the UK become the biggest market for plug-in hybrids, at least, in all of Europe. The majority of the tens of thousands of eligible vehicles sold were to company fleets. More than 70% of the 37,000 plug-in hybrids sold so far. Well, data from the Miles consultancy said that this is a company, by the way, that advises big blue chip companies on fuel management. They said that many businesses simply used the grant to save money on buying regular cars. So why is this an issue? Well, if you buy a car with a battery pack and electric motor and the gubbins that come with it, you have to carry them around. And if you've never plugged in your plug-in hybrid, you're simply driving it because your fleet got some money off the car. And maybe the car just turned up. Maybe you didn't even want a plug-in hybrid, but that's the one the company bought. And you've got no interest. You've got no interest in plugging the car in, even to a 3-pin plug, a domestic outlet overnight, because that would do, let alone having a level 2 charger installed on the wall of your house or inside your garage. You've just got no interest. You drive it like a normal car. The problem is, these cars are terrible if you don't plug them in. If they're simply being used for motorway miles and the battery pack and the electric motor have barely been given a workout, what a travesty, first of all. But also, what a ridiculous situation to be in for companies to get tax breaks, or just to get free money, free grant money, to buy these cars and not even be, in a way, checked up on. I'm not talking about people spying on your fleet movements, but surely if you're giving a company, right, money, free money, well, nothing's free, but anyway, you know what I mean. Money comes from somewhere to buy a green vehicle. Surely at some point, there has to be some sort of check and balance to make sure that it's being used that way, or maybe not. Maybe that's naive of me. So a big story today that's been all over Twitter as well, and loads of people weighing in with those comments. Lots of private buyers, lots of people I've seen on Twitter today, my friends online, people who I just chat to on Twitter, who own Mitsubishi Outlanders, plug-in hybrids, saying, hey, look, that's not me. That's not the way I behave. I get the sense that this is a big fleet buyer problem. Lots of individual owners often do their 20 miles of commuting every day purely on electric and are using them in the way that they work really well. Well, let's stay with Mitsubishi. According to Autocar, they've got no plans for an all-electric SUV. And in general, any bespoke pure electric BEV models completely. The path for Mitsubishi is to introduce some models with different powertrain options, either hybrid or plug-in hybrid, or all electric. According to Mark at Inside EVs, battery EVs have a limitation in terms of range for the moment. And in some countries, that might not be the answer, says Mitsubishi's strategy boss, who is Vincent Kobe. He added that the firm would add all-electric models to the range alongside the plug-in powertrains to other models at some time. And he reiterated that the firm will not develop a bespoke range of EV-specific models in the future, instead offering battery, EV, hybrid and plug-in versions of its existing models. Of course, as part of the Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi alliance, they have plenty of super clever people and resources to call upon should Mitsubishi want to go down that route, but clearly it's not their thing. They're sticking with plug-ins, and maybe at some point in the future going down the route of an all-electric. But for now, you can understand they've done amazing business with their Outlander plug-in hybrid, but I kind of sense the party's over now all those grants have gone. And finally, Tesla are once again simplifying things, but in the name of simplification, the price goes up just a little. And actually down in places. Let me explain. It's the base price of the Model S and the Model X. Well, today Tesla updated its online design studio for the S and the X, increasing the base price of both vehicles and introducing several changes to the options available. Last month, Elon Musk warned of upcoming changes to both of the interiors to simplify offerings. The changes are actually much more important than simply the interior bundles, according to Fred at Electrek, who writes that in internal communications obtained by Electrek, and who knows where they get stuff from, but they've been frighteningly accurate lately, so we'll go with this. Tesla said the changes are to simplify the product offerings and provide the best experience for customers. First of all, the base prices of the base versions of the S and the X saw an increase, while the price of the 100D versions, that's the 100 kilowatt hour pack and the dual motor, actually decreased slightly. Here in Europe, the base prices of the S and the X increased by €1,500, and the price of the 100D versions didn't decrease, but they stayed the same. Also on the Model S, the rear-facing child seats are gone. Tesla will instead recommend buyers, if you have a larger family, don't go for the S with the rear-facing child seats. Go for the X will be their advice. Changes to the panoramic roof, the 21-inch wheels, and the interior options as well can all be found on that Electrek article that I'll link to from the show notes. But once again, Tesla already had one of the more simple design studios out there, and by simplifying things even further and actually making the S and the X interiors more premium, it puts more distance of the S and the X down to the $35,000 Model 3, the base Model 3, when it finally arrives early in 2019. Well, sometime Q1 2019 is the promise, and we think that all the indicators are that when you look at battery production, the noises coming out of the Gigafactory where the batteries are made, that $35,000 Model 3 is indeed not only on the cards, but it's on quite a short time span when it will be here. Actually, it's important to have a more clearly defined range from the base Model 3 all the way up to the more premium S and the X. That's where we'll leave the news today. Plenty more on the Patreon bonus show that I make for everyone who supports at executive producer and above level. Talking of new Patreon supporters, thank you very much if you do support on Patreon. Your support is enormously appreciated. Hello to Raj. Well, RAJ PADWAL. I hope I said your name correctly, Raj. Thank you very much for being the new executive producer of this show. We will add you to the list of names that we read out once a week at the end of the show, so everyone who supports us, exec producers and above, coming up in just a moment. Now we need to answer your question of the week. What's the best way for you to be driving electric miles? What's the best model, the best business model for you to be owning an electric car? Is it to buy a new one? Is it to buy a used one? Is it to lease? Is it a subscription model? And if you live in a city, would you prefer maybe to do car sharing because you don't actually want to own a vehicle outright? Thank you very much to everyone who took part in this week's question of the week. And we'll start with Raj as well, our newest executive producer. Hello, thank you for the podcasts, says Raj. No, thank you for your support. I currently have a diesel VW. The lease runs out in 2020, by which time Tesla Model 3 is here and affordable. That's the plan, he says. I don't want to be paying, I'm not sure if it'll work out. I don't want to be paying over £500 a month. Yeah, that's difficult if you need to do the Tesla finance. It can be a little bit expensive, but we'll see. He says the answer to getting an electric car, for Raj at least, will be a lease. I like to change my cars every 2 to 3 years. I enjoy new cars. So do many people, Raj. That said, it's got to be affordable. Even used cars are very pricey right now. 30 kilowatts hour Nissan Leaf, over £13,000. Yeah, I mean, you're right. And actually, for 13 grand, you get a very, very nice fossil car. So you've really got to want an EV. The issue, he says, right now, people that can afford EVs would buy new cars anyway that are much cleaner than old diesels on the road. The older diesels are what we need to get rid of ASAP. I completely agree with you. Well, the government giving grants to people that can afford new cars is stupid, he says. They need to invest in scrappage. We need to be able to offer low-income families EVs under £5,000 and offer them interest-free ways to pay for it. Well, I think that's a brilliant idea, Raj, actually, and something that shows you thinking out of the box because, yes, what is the best way to get in to an electric car? Well, it is, firstly, a cheaper one, and also it is to spread the payments, and maybe that's something that central government can do. They've been very busy giving away thousands and thousands of pounds, at least here in the UK, of free money. I'm doing air quotes because it's kind of got to come from somewhere, but actually, if you're central government and doing things like interest-free loans, well, that can kind of all work out for you because you've got those mechanisms in place. And, as you know, once you own an EV, it's so much cheaper to run. The more miles you do, the more it makes sense to own an EV. The people that could benefit the most from saving running costs are those on lower incomes. And I get what you're saying. The people who don't need the free money are the people who can afford to buy an electric car. Completely agree with you. Okay, let's go to Carl's comment. Carl Kramer said the question of the week this week. I bought my first electric car used, and I'll do it again, but I'll get a Model 3 as soon as they start to get traded in. The base model is out of my price range. That'll be cut in half when they're used, and I'll be first in line. I know what you mean, Carl. I would say, though, that actually Model 3 is interesting because it's being made on a scale so much bigger than S and the X. I've long looked at a used Model S. Now, 2 reasons I won't do it. Firstly, I don't drive Monday to Friday, so I get an electric train to work, and it would be madness. It would be mad. Even if I bought one, it would be madness for me to have a car in the driveway 5 days a week. Or that I drove to, because I walk at the moment to a small train station that's near where we live. Okay, I could drive 10 minutes to the mainline station where they've got the little coffee shop and the croissants in the morning, so I could refuel before that long train journey into London. But even so, then it'd be sat in a car park all day. So that doesn't make sense. The other thing is, the S and the X used prices, as particularly with the official Tesla used cars, are not the cheapest out there. So yes, okay, you can probably get yourself into an okay Tesla Model S for $45,000. It's in good nick. Maybe £45,000 actually, bizarrely equivalent. Maybe £40,000 if it's slightly higher mileage, and obviously it won't be the redesign, so it'll be the original look. But anyway, so I've been looking at that. I keep going back to those prices and thinking, maybe, no, not now. It'd be mad for me to. But if ever I'm not working in London in the future, or maybe the podcast takes off, or we'd end up doing more with the YouTube channel and I work in London a bit less, that's definitely something that I would look at. So I really appreciate your comments. Hello to David Nye. Good day from Brisbane, down under in Australia. There's a few old Leafs on offer occasionally with badly degraded batteries, and a few Tesla Model S's from early builds to fairly new ones, but with prices to match. Neither option really appealed to us. says David. So step one was the Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid. We very rarely use petrol. We do the occasional 300k trip to see family. Step two, in less than a year, will be the right-hand variant of the Tesla Model 3. The new mid-range battery and rear-wheel drive would be perfect for us, he says, whilst the smallest battery would leave us with range anxiety on some trips. Okay, moving on to Jack's comment this week. Jack Oakley, thank you very much for emailing the show, which anyone can do. hello@evnewsdaily.com. What's the best way to get you in an electric car, I asked, and Jack said leasing is the best way if a new EV fits into your lifestyle. He says he drives 42,000 miles a year, so I could never lease. I'm a fan of certified pre-owned, as I was talking about a moment ago, with Tesla certified pre-owned. His 2016 BMW i3 was coming off a lease, had 7,800 miles, was certified pre-owned with BMW, and it had unlimited miles warranty, so he bought used. He's now done 18,000 miles. Thank you very much, Jack. Hello to Billy, Serverless Billy, from Power One Electrical Contracting, who says, hello, Martyn. This week's question of the week, I feel that ride-sharing, he was the very first person actually to chip in and say ride-sharing, rental and leasing are the three best ways to get into an electric car. The reason I feel this, he says, is because I was totally paranoid of SUVs in the late 90s due to the fact they had a bad reputation of flipping over. At least so the rumours showed after having an accident in my 300Z. I was forced to get an SUV as it was the only car available at the time. I showed up to rent a car. I enjoyed it so much, I couldn't wait to buy one, after which I never looked back. So he says, actually, a little taster, rent one. If you want a bit of car sharing, get that taster of that instant acceleration, the instant torque as you fly away, the silence of an EV, the sheer smooth driving. You can't feel any gears changing because there aren't any. That's the best way to get people to part with cash. Thank you, Serverless Billy from Power One Electrical Contracting. Jerry Allison says the best way is to acquire or get a trial of an EV by renting one. Maybe a day, maybe or two, maybe longer. Nothing different about EVs apart from the fuel that it runs on, says Jerry. Yeah, I agree. If you can rent one, if you can borrow one even for a couple of days. We went on a bit of a road trip last week and I left the Renault Zoe with my mum and said, have a little play with that for a couple of days and see what you think. And then came back after 2 days and she was like, I think we're going to have to get one just because she enjoyed the experience. Let's move on to Oscar's comments this week. Oscar Terran lives in Arizona and got into an EV by buying one. A 3-year-old 2011 Nissan Leaf, 6,000 miles back in May 2014. I travelled about 670 miles one way to get the Leaf. When I was looking to buy one, I didn't have enough of a tax liability to take advantage of the federal tax credits. He says, I know you think I'm crazy for travelling over 1,300 miles to get an EV, but when they weren't as popular and none available in my area, it's what you've got to do. And it's a fantastic thing, as you say. As of today, my Leaf has dropped to 8 bars, but I've only changed tyres and wiper blades. We're living in Arizona with a Nissan Leaf. And I know that in those hot climates, some people have certainly had more problems with the battery. You're down to 8 bars. Congratulations, my friend. You've got yourself a great car there. LaDonna Lewis says, what worked for me was buying used. It was a way to get what I wanted without instant depreciation that comes with purchasing new. I would say that I find the idea of accessing a car through a subscription service to be appealing. Sounds a bit like a lease, but the ability to swap out every year is appealing. Some of the services seem to offer insurance as part of the package as well. Yeah, as far as I know, the subscription packages that a lot of these car dealers are talking about are exactly that. It's a turnkey solution. So maybe it's more expensive than leasing. However, you can change the car. Some of them offer you maybe 6 changes a year. So after a couple of months of having the car, you think, I'd fancy this one, I fancy that one. Some of them make you keep it for a little bit longer. But yes, servicing, insurance, maintenance, everything's taken care of. Car breaks down, they sort it out. No worries with battery, all those kind of things. So you'll pay a little bit more, but I think people who are busy, who don't want the hassle, who want to change it more often, subscription could be an interesting way forward. Hello to Matt Gruby. And Matt says that our airport transport vehicles do 100,000 Ks a year, so buying one outright makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't like to go to a lease company and what's your mileage? Oh, about 100,000 a year. Longer repayment periods, though, says Matt Gruby, would be necessary, would be nice. Peter Mooney says this is an interesting question of the week. I've been looking for an EV, but I've come to the conclusion that the car for my family isn't yet available. In the past, I have considered leasing, as it feels like renting, which feels like paying off somebody else's mortgage. I'd rather own the car at the end. The point I'm trying to make, says Peter, cars are so expensive, purchasing one through any kind of finance is too expensive and takes too long to pay off. I can't believe I missed something so fundamental to owning an EV, says Peter, something that I hadn't considered above. I spend £300 a month on diesel. So there's £3,600 a year already, which you would be saving. With an EV, it almost disappears. So effectively, I have that much money to spend on the car every month. I could probably boost that to £500 a month and it make it work. It's a very good question. You've got to look at your total cost of ownership, and that takes someone with a long-term view, someone who can think big picture. Not everybody can. Someone that can sit down with a pen and paper, or if you can do it in your head, well done to you, and actually work out this is what we spend at the moment and add in maintenance. You know, on our diesel a couple of years ago, actually twice in my lifetime, I've had to replace diesel injectors. And that is not a job that comes in under £1,000, let me tell you that. On our motorhome many years ago, the diesel injectors went. That was a lot of fun. And on our old Golf diesel, the injectors went. That was a lot of fun. And there's just so much to go wrong with a fossil car once they start to get a little bit older. They go out of warranty. And there's just a bazillion things. I mean, I've replaced a ton of exhausts over the years, a few catalytic converters along the way, and everything else that goes wrong with fossil cars before we went electric. Hello to Mark Richards. Hello, Martin. I bought a Chevy Volt. It was used. Bought it in March for my wife, and I quickly grew to love driving the EV. I love the game in the Volt to try and never use gas. Then he puts in brackets, petrol. Haha, he's bilingual. So then in October, I bought myself the 2019 Chevy Bolt, not the Volt. Now the game is trying to get my miles per kilowatt hour as high as possible. It is good. Something I don't talk about it so much because people glaze over when I use this phrase, but it's the gamification of driving, and it's what I love the most. We did a long journey. Where did we go? We went to see the horse racing last weekend at Ascot here in the UK for a day out, and it was mostly motorway driving, and I was so obsessed with watching my miles per kilowatt hour, and my wife didn't really get it because she loves the EV, but she doesn't think about it like that. But I love playing the game. EVs make driving fun again if you play the game, and that gamification of it is something that I didn't know I would enjoy as much as I really do. He says, trying to get the elusive 300 miles per charge, hard to do now in winter, now that it's setting in, but he says got to 295 once. The Bolt. So his Bolt was $44,000 on the sticker price, negotiated it down to 40 and a bit, add in some taxes, back to 43, take away the tax rebate, the federal rebate, which they get in the USA, $7,500. There's a state rebate where he lives, and a Costco rebate. Wow, that works out a brand new EV under $30,000, $29,800. Well done. Congratulations, my friend. You are absolutely living the dream. Mark goes on to talk about his 10 kilowatts PV system on his roof, so he really does drive on sunshine. Ben Wood has chipped in on the subject this week to say that he bought the way into an EV, was buying a Nissan Leaf 3.5 years ago. It was 12 months old, £12,000, 8,000 miles on the clock, so it's done the worst of its depreciation. And actually, in the last year, certain EV models, I'd add, Mark, have gone up. Ben. Now, Ben, I'd never say buy a car to make money unless it's a classic car. However, there are some EVs, and I think the Leaf was one of those. I think it was the 30 kilowatt hour Leaf. They did some sums on that recently in the last 12 months, selling for more now they were 12 months ago, which is just mad, right? Such as the interest in EVs. I'm pleased to see the depreciation since I bought it has not been as bad as the dealer was forecasting, says Ben. If I was to part exchange the car now, I'd get 7,000 trade-in. So in 3.5 years, he says that's not losing too much money. I totally agree. Right, we've got 4 more comments. Andrew Jacobs says, I had to buy an electric car because I do 30,000 Ks a year over the lease limit and used bank finance to buy. This is a good point, actually, from Andrew. The more miles you do, the less leasing is an option, really. Mark Garnett says, this isn't my favourite question because surely the answer is, collectively, we need all the options. He says, I would start with people should consider their normal method of funding their car. But, and again, this is really important, the real world savings makes sense to consider that if you buy it new and keep it for a long time, buy it used and save more in fuel than depreciation, add all those things up, work out what's best for you. And that's a really good point. Or buy really old and save more than it cost in only a few years, because actually, if you look at maintenance of a really old fossil car versus maintenance of an old EV, if you can cope with a bit of battery degradation on those sort of first generation EVs that were kicking around without maybe battery heating and cooling and active thermal management, and you do shorter miles, well then, actually, there's not too much to go wrong on them. Hello to Samuel Price, last 2 comments. My first EV was an Ampera, which I loved, but due to personal reasons, had to say goodbye to. He says, that's such a shame. 3 years ago, and hasn't been able to get back into an EV since. But as a small business owner, says Sam, when the benefit in kind changes come in 2020, it'll make it more affordable. So I'll just fill in anybody's gaps there. Yes, in 2020, there's a weird thing happening in the UK, because if you get a company car, then here, at least here in the UK, as an individual, there is a tax implication because it's a benefit, right? So your company is giving you a benefit. You don't get anything for free. They're giving you a car to drive. It's a benefit in kind. And that's why we talk about the kind of the BIC or the BIK. So it's a benefit. So there's a tax implication for you as an individual. That tax goes up this year and then next year if you drive an EV, but then in 2020 it goes right back down. I don't know the exact numbers when it goes. It goes down to like 3 or 7% or something, which is kind of really attractive all of a sudden to have a company car. So it's a weird situation. It's almost like somebody or a group of people or even an industry has lobbied the government not to make EVs attractive until 2020. I wonder who that could be. Because all the big car makers are bringing out EVs in 2020. That's my conspiracy theory gene going mad again. Right, final comment this week from Peter. Hello to Peter Ball. His way into an EV was buying second-hand. It was a 2012 plate Mitsubishi i-MiEV back in October 2016. Bought it for £5,700. It had done 18,000 miles as a second vehicle to try electric. Over the last 2 years, I've done 12,000 miles in it, and it's brilliant. My old Mitsubishi ASX was traded in for a Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid for longer journeys. And that's Pete in North Wales. And actually, we have a friend in Anglesey, which, if you don't know the geography of the UK, let me just say, super, super rural. You go to the end of the country, then you cross a causeway, then you keep going. I mean, there's not a lot there apart from sheep and a few people. And she was saying that she really wants an EV, but generally in Wales, but particularly in North Wales, the infrastructure isn't there. So if you are driving in one of these places around the world, wherever you're listening to this, where the public infrastructure isn't there, you deserve extra bonus points for going above and beyond for driving an EV. Let's set you a brand new question of the week. Please email me and get involved with this, and we'll read out your answers next Sunday. Thanks to myev.com for setting us a new question of the week, and here it is. Either present or upcoming, which EV are you most excited about? It's a simple one. Either any EV on the market today or one that you know is upcoming, the ones that we talk about on the podcast all the time, either coming very soon or slightly further off. Which is the most exciting? And I'm going to give you my answer for a change today, because the Sunday show is all about you, so I won't talk about me next Sunday. It'll all be your emails as always. But for today, the one I'm most excited about actually is the Kia e-Niro. Now, I know that next week everyone's going to be saying they're looking forward to like the new Tesla Roadster, the Model Y, and I agree with all of that. I think the Kia e-Niro, if they can make them in enough numbers, can potentially be a huge car. We've seen the Hyundai Kona sell lots, particularly the bigger 64 kilowatt hour battery. It's still, even though that SUV crossover style, it's still a smallish car for a big family. The SUV segment is just huge everywhere now, but particularly here in Europe, people really want the SUV style, and that's what the Kia e-Niro is. It's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more expensive, I know, but with a 64 kilowatt hour battery, you're looking at amazing range on a really practical family car that does everything you could possibly want, loaded with technology. And so there you go. I'll chip in with my one first. The one I'm most excited about is the Kia e-Niro. Not the sexiest car by any means, but could have a huge impact if they make enough of them. And that is always the big if for anyone who is not Tesla at the moment. So send me yours. You can email the show, hello@evnewsdaily.com. That's hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can leave your comments on the YouTube or Facebook comments, and my blog has a feedback form on it as well. Either present or upcoming, which EV are you most excited about? Thank you very much to the 115 patrons of the podcast, whose generosity means that we get to make this show for you every single day. And thank you very much to our newest supporter, who I mentioned at the beginning of the show. That is RAJ PADWAL, new executive producer. As always, thank you to Phil Roberts from Electric Future, our premium partner of the show, who I was even messaging over the weekend, yesterday, and I was still picking his brains, this time on solar. There was a story about solar panels, PV roof solar panels in the UK, not playing nicely in some cases with smart meters in terms of feeding back into the grid and making sure that you are billed appropriately. And that was a national news story yesterday. And before I report it on the podcast, I was seeking his expert opinion before I present it to you without just reading a newspaper article. I was doing my research on that. So thank you very much, as always, Phil from Electric Future, for being the premium partner of the podcast and for me picking your brains all of the time to find out, particularly with solar and storage. Hello to Cesar Trujillo, a partner of the show, David Allen, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz, and Sasha Pallenberg, all our partners of the podcast, and of course all of our exec producers as well. Ashley Hill, Arid Gear Skalsveen, Bjard Fuchstak, Brian Weatherall, Chris Benson, Chris Hopkins, Darren Bird, David Partington, David Prescott, Damian Davis, George Clargo, Jack Oakley, John Bailey, John H. Mayer III, John Timmis, Kevin Mayerson, Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Martin Croft, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Gruby, Neil E. Roberts from Sussex EVs, Paul Stevenson, Paul Seeger-Smith, Philippe Calvet, Renee Schneider, Rod James, Scott Callahan, and the Limousine Line in Sydney. And if you'd love to hear your name added to the list, go to patreon.com/EVNewsDaily, and you know what to do. There are 292 previous episodes of the show on the places where you get podcasts from, and you can find me on the socials anytime today as well, joining you for a brand new week tomorrow. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, and I will catch you tomorrow.